Picture this. A world leader ditching those private jets, opting for economy class instead. Someone who shows off their, $12 wallet like it's the latest smartphone.
Sounds like a pretty down-to-earth guy.
That's Mexico's former president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, or AMLO, as everyone calls him. He was a total rock star when he came into power, promising a revolution and all that. But did he really deliver? That's what we're going to be digging into today.
Sounds intriguing.
So we're taking a deep dive into this recent article from the Washington Post. They're taking a look back at AMLO's time in office now that his presidency's over.
Makes sense. Time to take stock.
Whether you've been following Mexican politics forever or you're just kind of curious about this AMLO character, get ready to be totally in the know. We're breaking it all down.
Love it.
Okay, so rewind with me back to 28 time. A leftist actually wins the presidency in Mexico.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a huge deal. The article calls it a mass uprising against corruption. People were desperate for change, and AMLO was their guy.
You've got to remember the context here. Mexico had been stuck with a single party in power for ages, and corruption was just the norm. AMLO was totally different. He was relatable, folksy, not your typical politician.
Right. Like the article mentioned, he ditched the presidential jet and flew coach. Plus, he was always showing off that super simple wallet he had.
Yeah, the article said it cost $12 or something. That image really resonated with people. It showed he wasn't in it for the money or the fancy lifestyle.
Yeah, ditching the private jet, embracing being frugal. It's a powerful statement. What do you think? Was it a calculated political move, or was he just being genuine?
That's the million-dollar question, right? The article kind of suggests it was a bit of both. AMLO understood just how fed up people were with corruption and the elite living it up. By presenting himself as a man of the people, he really tapped into that anger, and it worked brilliantly.
He definitely knew how to work it. And one of his big campaign promises, one that really stuck with people, was this idea of the poor come first. And it wasn't just talk. He actually put a lot of money into social programs and even doubled the minimum wage.
He was really trying to make a difference for the working class.
It wasn't just talk. He really did make some big changes. Millions of Mexicans were actually lifted out of poverty while he was in office.
Yeah, his policies had a real impact.
But the article doesn't just skim over things. It also takes a closer look at what those achievements really meant. You know what I mean?
Right, who actually benefited the most from these changes.
Exactly.
And, it's interesting because the article talks about how, overall poverty went down. But the people at the very bottom, the poorest Mexicans, they actually didn't see things get much better. Kind of the opposite, actually.
Really? That seems kind of counterintuitive, doesn't it? Especially with this whole the poor come first message.
Yeah, it's complicated. The article suggests that maybe AMLO's approach was a little too, broad. Instead of focusing all those resources on programs specifically for the most vulnerable people, his policies kind of spread the benefits out more evenly, if that makes sense.
I see what you're saying.
Think of it like this. Imagine you're watering a garden, right? AMLO's approach was lightly sprinkling the whole thing. Good, in theory, but sometimes those plants in the back corner, they need a lot more than a sprinkle to really thrive,
That's a great analogy. And it really highlights how tricky it is to actually solve poverty, right? Just wanting to help isn't always enough. Sometimes, even with the best intentions, things don't always work out the way we hope, at least not for everyone.
Exactly.
And speaking of big plans and tricky situations, let's talk about AMLO's fourth transformation. This wasn't just some minor policy change. This was about cementing his place in history, right? Putting him up there with the giants of the Mexican Revolution. Did he actually pull it off?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. The article points out that some of the things AMLO did weren't exactly revolutionary moves.
Yeah.
Well, he actually made the government smaller, which is not usually what you'd expect from a leftist leader. Plus, he pretty much kept the free market system going.
Huh. That does seem at odds with the image of a radical leftist, right?
Exactly. And then there's how the military's role changed under his leadership. They actually gained more power and influence, which has worried some people.
So it sounds like a bit of a mixed bag. Definitely not the total system overhaul some people were expecting. Do you think AMLO's fourth transformation fell short? Or is it still too early to really say?
It's tough to judge, honestly. It's a complicated legacy. He didn't completely rewrite the rules of Mexican politics or anything, but he definitely shook things up. He challenged the way things were always done, brought a new style to the table, and for that, he'll be remembered, that's for sure.
I can see that.
Whether this fourth transformation thing really lives up to its name, well, People will probably be debating that one for years to come.
That's a good point. And that brings us to today and the big question of what's next for Mexico. AMLO's chosen successor, Claudia Sheinbaum, she just won a landslide victory in the recent election. What do we know about her? Should we expect more of the same, like AMLO 2.0?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sheinbaum is a really interesting figure. She's very different from AMLO, who's very charismatic, the everyman kind of leader.
Right.
She's known for being more reserved. Plus, she's a scientist by training.
Interesting.
The article calls her a bit of an enigma. Like, we haven't really seen her full hand yet,
So we'll have to wait and see what she does. A scientist in office, huh? That's definitely different. Makes you wonder, is she going to govern in AMLO's shadow? Or is she going to do her own thing completely? What kind of Mexico do you think she'll lead?
Well, that's what the article's getting at, right? It hints that Sheinbaum might actually be the real deal when it comes to being a leftist. Like, maybe even more so than AMLO.
Seriously?
Yeah, there's this idea floating around that she might be more gung-ho about those big radical reforms that AMLO talked about but never really got around to.
So we're talking about a potential plot twist in the whole AMLO legacy. Could Sheinbaum be the one who actually makes this fourth transformation happen?
It's totally possible. And that's what makes this whole moment in Mexican politics so fascinating. Sheinbaum's holding all the cards now. Will she stick to AMLO's plan, or will she just toss it out and start fresh? People are watching her every move.
I bet. But one thing's for sure, right? AMLO really shook things up. He might be out of office, but his impact is going to last a long time.
No doubt about it. He really changed the game down there.
It's like a good reminder that sometimes a leader's impact isn't just about the policies they pass, it's about the possibilities they create for whoever comes next.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Well, this has been a really fascinating look at AMLO, a super complex and charismatic dude. And of course, we had to dig into that legacy he's leaving behind. If you want to go even deeper on AMLO's presidency and what his successor might do, definitely check out that Washington Post article we keep mentioning. We'll link to it in the show notes. And hey, if you're hungry for more deep dives into, well, anything that's got you curious, hit that subscribe button and let us know what you want to explore next.
Para desperdiciarla en cosas que no valen la pena. La felicidad es estar bien. Gracias de corazón. ¡Que viva